Well, hello everybody. Thank you for being here. Some of you may recall that at the beginning of 2018, taxes on corporations were dropped from 35% to 21%. But that change in the tax law came with a promise that those companies we were going to be closing the loopholes that would allow them to continue even writing off more of their taxes. Unfortunately, that's not what we've seen. A report last year found out that U.S. corporations paid an average tax of just 11%. Multinational corporations regularly use accounting maneuvers to shift profits to tax havens like the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg. For example, in 2017, U.S. companies booked almost $60 billion of profits in the Cayman Islands with just 1,500 employees. I would say that that's a heck of a return. All told, these tax strategies are estimated to cost the United States more than $100 billion annually. And that $100 billion is lost revenue that we absolutely need for things like to improve our infrastructure, certainly provide better services in healthcare, and absolutely improve the schools that we have in this country to make sure that we can educate kids for the future. And although international agreements have required companies to disclose their profits by country to the IRS, investors and the public have no consistent information about which corporations are using these loopholes. Meanwhile, small businesses like the great one we're standing in here right now, Raygun, don't use these tactics, and that puts them at a further disadvantage to larger companies. And to make matters worse, one of the solutions from the 2017 tax cuts actually incentivized companies to move production of U.S. jobs overseas. And that's why I'm introducing the Disclosure of Tax Haven and Offshoring Act, which would require large public companies to disclose their profit, taxes, and number of employees for each country that they operate in. That disclosure would also include information about tangible assets like factories, so it'll let us see which companies have responded to changes in tax law by moving productions overseas. This work actually follows a bill that I wrote and passed last year, which was the Outsourcing Accountability Act, which would have simply required companies to disclose which state and which country they have employees in and let us know how many they had in those areas. That information is crucial, not only so the public can hold companies accountable if they're shipping jobs overseas, but it also makes it easier for workers who are laid off to get the assistance that they're eligible for. Iowa's small businesses like Raygun shouldn't be put at a disadvantage to large multinational corporations, nor should big pharmaceutical companies be able to overcharge Americans for prescription drugs, then avoid paying taxes by shifting those profits to tax havens. Shining a light on these practices will help investors and the public understand the risks that public corporations are taking to try and squeeze out extra profits. I ran for office to promise to bring an Iowan's sense of fairness and to hold corporations accountable to doing what's right by this country. Large corporations don't need another way to pay lower taxes than small businesses. So I'm proud to introduce the Disclosure of Tax Havens and Offshoring Act to shine a light on this practice. And I'd like to introduce Mike Draper, local business owner of a great store named Raygun.
Ooh,
Mike?
Oh, hello. Speaking on behalf of corporate America, yeah, I support this bill mainly because I think transparency can solve a lot of problems, and that if you look at the tax rate, the hidden tax rate, and that what corporations pay kind of is all over the place. I mean, some pay -1, some pay 8, some pay 11. A small business like me would pay more like 20, the standard corporate rate. But if you look at something like sales tax, which every customer can see, every company pays the same sales tax rate. Because if you went into Target, it wouldn't make any sense that Target pays 4% in sales tax and Raygun pays 7% in sales tax. So giving people the information, I think, will automatically help level the playing field, in that people would say, well, it's not necessarily fair that one would pay a lower tax rate. And so it's not necessarily, you're not trying to overburden these companies, you're trying to actually make public what they're doing already. So I support transparency across the board. And this transparency, I think, will help start to level the playing field, and that if you look at how America is set up, it is almost like this inverted pyramid. If you were trying to build an economy that encouraged people to start small businesses, it would not look like the American economy. Small businesses have the highest startup costs, the highest healthcare costs, the highest labor costs, and the highest tax rates. And then everything gets reduced. And so my incentive is not to necessarily stay small and employ people in good jobs. It's to get as large as possible. So eventually I'm making money from the federal government. And so I think transparency will not only make the system more equitable in general, but will actually encourage more growth from the littlest side up to the top. So thanks for coming, everybody.